Back in March, we predicted that the catching position would be one of the most important ones for the Guardians in 2024. Unfortunately, we were talking about Bo Naylor and not David Fry, who also wasn't catching by the end of the year. Quite the year for Guardians catchers and the ones that stopped catching halfway through the year. We're reviewing catching on today's Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time on Logan Clark, who had the second highest WRC plus of any catcher in the minors this year, right, Justin? And I am so willing to bet on that let me tell you about our sponsor, or maybe you can bet on that over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I'm going to take off my glasses. Someone asked me on Twitter, why do I keep doing this? There were a few complaints about reflections, so I didn't want to deal with it anymore. So that's why I always take off my glasses early in the show.
I could take mine off, but then I wouldn't be able to see the screen, and who knows what kind of things I might put up on the screen during our video portion of the podcast.
I'll just sit here and do things, my own set of things to set off you during the podcast. That's my job, right?
You're gonna have to deal with the glare on mine. I think I've reduced the glare on most of mine, but yeah, I can't do it. Otherwise, this show doesn't work on the video portion of things. So
sorry, I was just enjoying my
yeah. So it's okay. Anyway, just gonna skip that comment today. Not ready for that. It's Friday, Jeff. I need good thoughts for the weekend, not ones that make me want to puke. We're reviewing catching. Guardians, you guys voted. It was close. A lot of people wanted to talk about outfield, so I guess outfield will be next. But today, we're reviewing Guardians catchers in 2024. Jeff, we both thought that Bo Naylor,
third most important hitter on the team.
Yeah, we said Jose, Quan, and then Bo Naylor would be the third.
Well, we thought actually we said Josh.
Did we say Josh over?
Yeah, because Quan had a rough year a year ago. Quan was our four, because remember he was barely a 100 WRC plus.
Yeah.
So it went Jose, and went Josh, and then it went Bo, and then it went Quan. So we know nothing. You might as well just turn off the podcast, and we'll see you tomorrow. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Locked On Guardians. Let me at least get my intro in before we end it. I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts, one of the first people they brought on to talk about baseball at Locked On. Before that, I was nationally recognized prospect writer at Scouts in 24/7.
Justin Latta. I don't know if I've ever been nationally recognized anywhere, maybe locally recognized.
You've had more local recognition. You know what I mean? I've never had hey, are you?
Podcasts are good with words.
Yeah, no, I've never. You've had the one where people have seen you in public and recognized you.
Yes,
I've not had that.
I guess. But I've written about the Guardians minor league system since 2007 at a whole cavalcade of places, including Guardians Baseball Insider and now Prospects Live next year in Cleveland on Substack, the Morning Journal, the News Herald, which, hey, on the News Herald website, you can go find my piece now on the Guardians Rule 5 situation heading in the next week, which we'll talk about on the show next week as well.
A trade will happen next week, and something I feel very strongly that is going to happen. We'll have some kind of trade to discuss. It's not going to be a huge one, but we will have a trade to discuss.
For sure. And if you're a nerd like us, Rule 5 is like one of our favorite days of the year. And for some reason, people are really into that, and we're here for it. So hopefully you'll join us next week for that, because I know we'll talk about that. But today we're talking about catcher, and we're talking about what in the world happened to Bo Naylor's bat. Bo Naylor, when he was drafted, I remember the conversation, which it is for most prep catchers. Let's be honest. For most prep catchers who get drafted,
it's the biggest risk in baseball.
It is, but the question usually is he going to stick a catcher? Yeah. Will the bat force him to move off the position? And that's usually what happens to most high school catchers. You know, the ones that are truly elite and get through, they stay. It takes a little bit longer, but a lot of the conversation usually is, will the bat push him off the position, and will he stick at defense? And that was the conversation around Bo when he got drafted. He was even a catcher in high school. He was
third baseman and shortstop.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting too, what I was doing when everyone loves my interrupting.
And he was a bat first.
Yeah, player. He was definitely bat first. The interesting thing too about catchers is I haven't done a study on this in a while, but like for a long time, if you're looking at the top 5 to 6 catchers in baseball, only one was not a college player. Like, it's the other reason why it's a risk is because it doesn't really pay off. You're looking at primarily because a lot of the high school kids, what happens is exactly what you're talking about. It's, well, maybe we'll talk about Ralphie, but it's what likely will happen to him, even if he was healthy this year and be able to play, which is the bat outpaces the defense at such a rate that those guys you're not going to delay their arrival in the big leagues just because of
the defense, right?
The defense. So it's like when we're looking at all of this stuff, it just happens to be like there's most of the top catchers in terms of production, are college players, because that's the only place you can go and get all of that time to produce. I'm blanking on, Connor Wong, one of my favorites, right? College player.
Any catcher from the University of Louisville ever.
Will Smith, JT Realmuto, I want to say, was a college guy. I could be wrong there. Blanking on the kid in Patrick Bailey, right? That's the Giants one.
North Carolina State, yeah.
Yeah. There's we see it sometimes with Latin players. There's some very good Latin catchers out there. But a lot of them are college players, and that makes Bo Naylor kind of a little bit extra. No, I was wrong. JT Realmuto was a high school kid, but still, it's a majority college guys. We see mostly college players kind of step up into that position and perform well. And, I'll be curious to see, just in general, but Bo Naylor is definitely there's a part of me, I was discussing this before with you, where I'm concerned that the league just figured him out. And I don't know if there's I'm not going to write anyone off after a sophomore slump, but I think there's area for concern that he's not like a Jimenez, man, I'm not good with words today. A Jimenez situation, right? Where we saw a peak and he may not approach it again.
I would say that's too premature. We have a lot more data on Jimenez. We have 2 years of data on him, plus some before that. Whereas we only have 1 year of Jimenez's good data. Bo Naylor, we've got a year and a half of pro data of MLB data. So I'm not sure I really think that that's the direction it's going in yet. Obviously, a 2025 goes in the same direction as 2024. I'll be more inclined to agree with you. It's just so bizarre. Like all the stuff offensively that Bo Naylor did well in the minors, it was passivity, which he is still a passive hitter if you kind of look at some of the data points.
But he was almost not passive enough. His walk rate was halved from a year ago.
Yeah, he wasn't I mean, the passivity was still there. You look at his strikeout rate and it's compared to his swing rate, and the strikeout rate was more than double the swing rate. So that tells you right there he's a little bit passive. But maybe he wasn't passive enough. You're right. Just a lot of chasing and no walks,
which is sad because chase rate is his best offensive area on Baseball Savant. So everyone picture Bo Naylor, your favorite Bo Naylor, or the typical Bo Naylor at bat, and you probably picture him chasing. That's what he did best last year offensively, was not chase. That was the one and it wasn't good, but that's just what he did best.
Yeah, so it's just very bizarre that he didn't carry any of. I mean, 2023 when he finally got his footing under him after the initial start in the first month where he struggled, all that stuff that he did in the minors showed up in the majors. Like we saw signs of what he was able to do in the minors as a prospect show up in the majors. And that's a great indicator of a true skill set carrying. And then last year, just none of that stayed, and to the point where he is now a glove first catcher, which is just very bizarre from his original draft status. And I know I've heard some other places too saying it was clear in the minors he was starting to make the defensive leap. Like people saw as he was progressing in the minors that he was starting to make the defensive leap, but people thought he'd be a star if that was the case. No one thought the bat would fall like this.
The one thing I'll say that was a sign that maybe we should have had more concern was there's one thing that we pretty much never see happen, which is a guy gets to the big leagues and strikes out less. And he had a lot more contact that rookie season than his strikeout rate was higher in AAA than it was in the majors. And that's probably a sign that.
No, it wasn't. It was 19% in AAA and 23% in the majors.
The year before that, I had saw that it was at 25%, and then like he was in Double-A, was at 21. Like he had been 20 throughout his minor league career.
He struck out more as he moved up. I mean, he
I
had
know,
31%
but
in 2021, but that was after he
throughout his career, he was over that. He was around and higher than 20. He was around that 23%. So like no guy keeps that level the same while getting up to them. Like that's a sign that, maybe he had a little bit of a fluky luck to it, maybe a small degree of guys pitching him in the zone, but like the overall strikeout percentage isn't going to typically stay in line with minor league averages.
It's not. No, there's always going to be a bump unless you're a truly elite level player. But
that's
I think
the
that
only
also
negative sign you could really find, I think.
But that also doesn't take into account that he did make some significant changes to his offensive game after 2021, which is why, again, I'm not willing to write him off after 1 year either, a year and a half, whatever you want to put it at, is because we've seen this before from him. He showed a lot of potential in 2019 at low A, at the pandemic in 2020, comes back in 2021 in Double-A, and he really struggles. And to the same point, people are wondering what happened to the bat of Bo Naylor. 2022 comes back completely revamped, more passive, more contact, walking a ton, focusing on hitting the ball in the air with, to the pull side, all that kind of stuff. Worked out in Double-A. It carried the Triple-A. We saw a 2020 performance. Probably won't see it in the majors, but, we know he is a good running catcher. And it kind of felt like a 3 true outcome type catcher for him. So he made all those changes in 2022 after having a poor 2021, and people wrote him off after 2021 thinking that, it just wasn't going to work out. And everything we've heard about Bo Naylor points to the work ethic. And now it's one thing to just work on things, right? We talked about this with Travis Bazzana. It's one thing to work on things and be a hard worker. That can be eyewash. But Bo Naylor, we know, works on the things that matter. I mean, this speaks to defense too, which we'll have to talk about. But a guy who went out and learned Spanish to communicate with his teammates better and his pitchers. He's very invested in the defensive side of things. I do think that he'll rebound offensively. I mean, he had a 74 WRC plus. Are we talking about a guy who's going to be, I don't know, are we going to get a 122 WRC plus catcher again from, I don't know about that.
I don't.
But I do think.
The other thing that I think is interesting is, like I've talked about before, one of the best indicators of quality contact in the minors is BABIP. And, until outside of that 2022 season, his BABIPs were a little up and down. So I think he's always going to be kind of more of a lower average guy. I think the power is there. I think
that's why I said 3 true outcome.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I don't know if we're going to get back to that 122. His walk rate is literally half. He played twice as many games and had 2 more home runs this year. So the power kind of went away and the walk rate was halved. So it's getting that balance back, I think, is really getting the walk rate up and then, making them pay, as it were, when mistakes are made.
Yeah, he might always carry a lower BABIP for that reason, for sure. So I don't know. I do believe he can get back to being a league average offensive bat. I mean,
I think that's the hope. Yeah.
I think we thought there would be more than that, and maybe there will be, but I also just I think it's less about the league figuring him out offensively, as it's just the rigors of defense takes a toll, and Cleveland demands a lot defensively out of their catchers, and Bo Naylor is invested on that side of things, and he made a lot of strides last year defensively. We came into the year talking about how blocking was an issue. Blocking ended up being a positive for him as the year went on. I know there were some issues in the playoffs. For all the issues he had throwing runners out, he was about league average. He threw out 20% of base runners last year.
63rd percentile. Oh, in league.
In the league.
I'm sorry, that was blocking. He was 40th percentile in caught stealing. He was a little bit below league average.
20%. He threw out almost 21%. The league average last year in caught stealing was 21.8. So he was about 1% lower than the league average last year when it comes to caught stealing. So, and then framing obviously is off the charts for him.
Yeah.
I do think the one area for
percentile there.
I do think the one area that he needs to make strides in is game calling defensively. I think we've heard that from multiple areas now. That game calling is one of those things that takes time too, and a lot of repetition and studying. So I think that's still an area.
Hoping Hedges can continue to kind of rub off and tutor him, because we know that's maybe what he does best.
Yep. We'll talk about Austin Hedges' role here, and he's already back for 2025. We'll get to David Fry. We'll get to some minor league catchers to watch as well from their performances in 2024 on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Building for the future, we know, is what Cleveland is trying to do with Bo Naylor. You want to have a strong catcher foundation. Building for the future and winning in the future and good strategies is just what SelectQuote wants to do. They want to protect your legacy and your family's financial future. These policies with SelectQuote are actually more affordable than you think. You could get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 a month. Head to SelectQuote.com. You get a licensed insurance agent. They will call you right away. Find the right policy for your life and your budget. SelectQuote, they shop and you save. It's all not a one size fits all. They're America's leading insurance brokers, nearly 40 years of experience, over 2 million customers, and have found over $700 million of coverage going back to 1985. So get the right insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. I don't want to spend a whole ton of time on Austin Hedges, truthfully, because I think we know what the conversation looks like. You got a good chunk of people who don't like that they're investing X amount of dollars in him. I will say until David Fry got hurt, which I want to spend more time on David Fry here, but until David Fry got hurt, Austin Hedges was literally in the perfect role. Like, they had him literally what they wanted out of him. They got the leadership qualities, the defense, they limited his exposure offensively because you had David Fry. It was the ideal scenario to have. Now in 2025, you're bringing him back, and he's essentially going to be your backup catcher, which means A, Bo Naylor's got to be that much better next year offensively, and B, I don't know what else you do there, but as we've heard, Austin Hedges means a lot to this team. And you said before, they weren't bidding against themselves. There was a reason they spent what they did on him.
Travis Starno just got $14 million over 2 years. He's a better offensive player, but to play 60 games a year, like Darno is going to play 60 games a year, and he just got $7 million for 2 years at age 35. Like, that's what the catcher market is like.
Yeah, even more so if you can hit a little bit. But I also would not be taking anything the Angels do as a good thing, because nothing they do ever makes sense anymore. But it is just a shame last year that, like, Austin Hedges, we can see his value, we can hear his value, not on paper, and they were able to make it work because of the David Fry situation. It just really stinks that David Fry got hurt, and really, because I think that's what really disrupted them in the playoffs. I think with David Fry healthy in the playoffs, you have so much more flexibility, and maybe if David Fry can't only DH, maybe he doesn't come through with some of those moments that were so special in the playoffs because of how they deployed him. But it really does stink that they were limited in the playoffs because of David Fry's injury, and that overexposed Austin Hedges, and that's what you're going to get in 2025, unfortunately. So Bo Naylor needs to be better for that reason alone.
Yeah, he has value. I know people don't love him, but there is value there in what he can do and what he can provide. And he's perfect as a third catcher. Unfortunately, they need more than that for at least most of next year.
And I know a lot of people are like, make him a coach. We've stated multiple times, and I know a lot of people don't understand this because, and I'm not trying to be like elitist or anything here, but like, we've been lucky enough to interview baseball players and athletes, and you understand that when a player is on the team, their message means a little bit something different than it does coming from a manager. You can make him a coach or a manager, that's fine.
And he doesn't want that. He wants to play. Like, you can't just force a guy to become a coach.
He would go somewhere else.
Yes.
Someone else would grab him. But the message just is so much different. If you ever had a chance to talk to a player, the message is just, it's a very different tone, a very different feel.
And it also allows him
coming from someone in your own clubhouse.
Like, there's a limited number of times coaches can come on the field. There's a limited number of ways they can interact. Like, it gives Cleveland that ability to have a coach on the field at all times.
And managers also just don't want to overstep the clubhouse too. They don't want to go out and send so many messages or have so many meetings or do all these things because it gets tiring and it gets old. You want to be an effective voice, and that's why managers eventually and coaches get fired, is because their voice gets drowned out after a while and you need a fresh voice. When you have a player like Austin Hedges, you can avoid some of that oversaturation that comes from, too much from a manager or coach. And that's why it's valuable. Man, I liked what David Fry could do in the minors, and then we saw what he did in 2023, and I thought, definitely could be a valuable guy. And I think I even underestimated how good he could be in the majors in terms of what his role is. Never thought he'd be a guy I'd be comfortable throwing out in the outfield or third base or wherever. I always thought he'd be a third catcher, but and maybe he kind of is, but hard to understate how important David Fry was to this team last year. Just for context, I don't know what the I guess the minimum here must be at least 61 plate appearances, but if you look on Fangraphs, playing time qualified catchers offensively last year, David Fry led the league at 217 WRC plus, and Cleveland still finished 24th in offensive catcher production at 74 WRC plus. But had some incredible playoff moments from David Fry and situations you and I didn't think he'd come through in. And, you want him to recover from that Tommy John surgery real quick, because you can see what impact he made last year with his versatility. And I think the bat's legit.
Yeah, and again, I'll bring up BABIP because I bring it up all the time because it's a useful tool and it tells us about stuff. And I feel like, well, he just got super lucky last year. Yes and no. Did he have a degree of luck? Absolutely. A 307 was his BABIP. The year before, it was 299. So a slight regression, but not a lot. So over the course of the year, we did see some ups and downs with how he played. But that was, partially maybe due to health. So we'll have to see. But he is entering his age 29 year. It took him a while to debut. He's going to turn 29 in 6 days. So, you're just going to take what you can get. And it's a great story. But I think they have found a potential, above average regular with him, which, especially if he can be more of an everyday catcher. I could be wrong here, but I felt like we even saw him playing better at catcher. There was points earlier in the year where, in terms of blocking and things like that, he was maybe their best catcher in terms of blocking. I don't know about the caught stealing and stuff like that, but I mean, there's a world where in 2 years, David Fry is your starting catcher.
I mean, I think the question about that is his age.
Yeah. But
catching ages you a little bit faster because of the demands of the position. And
he's always bounced around so much. The one thing is he has a little bit less wear and tear than your average 29-year-old catcher.
Well, he just had Tommy John, so I don't know how
I know. I mean, there is still that, but I don't think the wheels are quite ready to fall off, but I mean, it's not likely. Let me say that. I'm not saying he's their starting catcher, but I still think there's the potential for that. I think there's the potential that him and Naylor could form a really good tandem, and then you just have them both playing a bunch. There's a lot of ways it can turn out. There's a lot of ceiling, and there's also just a lot of questions, which maybe is not what everyone wants to hear. When you're a fan, you definitely want it to be more well defined, but it's better this than the Zaninos and the Roberto Perez's and Hedgie as your starter. Remember that?
Which was a thing for a little bit, yeah,
for 2 years. So this is a better situation to be in.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy the tools full time defensively for David Fry catching, but I buy him enough where he can start at catcher against lefties, and you can keep Bo Naylor on the bench, and he can play also, first or outfield or DH against right-handers while Bo catches. So I think, yeah, he's a useful player everywhere. And he's not going to play the field at all in 2025, which is a shame. And he won't be catching, but they should get his bat back by June, and that'll be a big boost to this lineup, no matter to where it is. But some of the best moments on the field this year, David Fry. It's hard to believe. All right, so David Fry was kind of an out of the nowhere guy. as far as catching is concerned. Thanks, by the way, JC Mejia, who is, I believe, serving his second PED suspension.
Yeah.
There was a time where I thought I would have traded Sam Hedges instead of JC Mejia.
Same.
Thank God the Guardians didn't listen to us on that one.
I didn't think they should keep either, if I'm being honest at the time.
I was much more a believer in JC Mejia.
I was as well, but I thought they were both not long for the bigs. And
you and I think, are both believers in Cooper Ingle. We'll see where we stand on Jacob Cozart. We got to talk about two other guys that could be on the catching radar in the future, all coming up.
Do you know who is on FanDuel has the second best odds to win the NBA Tournament Cup? Is this I know it's its second year in existence. How excited would people be for that championship? Do you get excited to win the NBA Cup? Number 2 odds for the Cup currently belong to the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 800 compared to the Knicks plus 650. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5. You could put $5 on the Cavs there, and if they win it, you get $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets on the NFL or NBA all in one place. So when you get in the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Well, we should shout out that, first note, Cooper Ingle, friend of the show, was on the show last year. So if you haven't had a chance to check out that one from the summer, do that. It was a pretty good interview.
Yep.
So Cooper Ingle, not that this means anything, but he won the Midwest League MVP this year.
He walked more than he struck out.
What's that?
He walked more than he struck out across 2 levels, which is like we talk about how walks are kind of, they're not, it's not a stat that translates, but when you walk more than you strike out, that is a positive sign.
Never a bad thing. It's never a bad thing. Ingle showed a lot offensively. I was impressed with him. Defense, like, the framing is definitely there. I think as a receiver, he's moving in the right direction. I'm curious to see where he goes with the arm, because he was battling a shoulder injury at times last year that affected his throwing. So I do think that the arm strength is something to watch for Cooper Ingle. He talked about adapting to hitting fly balls in the air a little bit more. And if you look at his batted ball data, he didn't hit a majority fly balls. He didn't pull the ball the majority of the time, but he was able to identify opportunities where he could, and he had a really impactful offensive year. So he was leading off for the Ducks when he got to double A. I thought that was hilarious, but definitely kind of seems like a patient / passive hitter who has the chance to impact the ball a little bit. And I think similar qualities to Bo Naylor in that regard, although much more contact oriented. But yeah, I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him a little with a healthier arm, but the rest of the tool set is there, and it seems like a smart player, and seems like a guy who wants to improve a catcher. I'm really interested in him. Who are you higher on going forward after this year? I know it's only 2 months of Jacob Cozart, but these are 2 ACC catchers, both highly regarded coming out of college, although, Ingle did kind of move around a little bit. Yeah. Who are you higher on going into 2025? Jacob Cozart or Cooper Ingle? And I'm talking about strictly catcher.
Well, I talked about how one of the best indicator stats for quality contact and hit tool is BABIP, and that's one of those things that it's more about in the lower minors and in college. You want to see a higher BABIP. I know you're like, wait, normally you say it's a bad thing. It's because when you're facing lesser competition, you should have a better quality of contact. Like when you're doing that, if I go and I pull up Cozart, which I've already done, it's like his BABIP in college, his highest value was a 329. He was a 301 this year. Very small sample for Cleveland with Lake County. So I'm not going to even really use that. I know it went poorly. Cooper Ingle's worst BABIP so far in the time he's been in Cleveland, and his 2023 was a small sample, was a 324 in AA this year. To me, it's Ingle, and it's not really close. mean, Cozart's probably the better catcher, and I think he was drafted because I think he's a no doubt defensive catcher, that he has a very good chance to be at least a solid backup type, would be my thought, with, some pop and some chance for more. But I think Ingle just has offensively a more complete and exciting profile. Like the contact, I am not worried about Cooper Ingle's contact. I am very worried about Cozart's contact. He had a lot of contact and quality contact issues that, I mean, if you want to talk about why guys fail, it's having swing profiles and approaches like Cozart's.
Yeah, I did see a lot of Jacob Cozart at the end of the year in Lake County. I saw a lot of Cooper Ingle in the first half. I don't want to, bag on Cozart too much because he did go right to high A out of college, which, to be fair, you're in the ACC. I think that's a fair level to start at. He played a full college season, though. He went from February to June and then jumped into high A ball right after. That's a big adjustment to make. Although Cooper Ingle was fantastic in 2023 when he did the same thing. So that, I don't know if that says anything or not, but I do agree with you. Cozart for sure looks like the stronger defender. Ingle looks like he has the more dependable bat. I think what's funny is I think Cozart offensively to me, or actually all around, is not dissimilar to Mike Zunino in a lot of ways.
In a weird way, Cozart has the higher floor and the higher ceiling, but Ingle is more likely to be a productive major leaguer. Like that, I know that's a weird statement to make because Cozart's floor, he's got the tools very easily to be a backup. So that gives him a very high. And then his ceiling, because of the power, I think he's got better power than Ingle. But it's like Ingle's profile is more likely to turn into a big leaguer. So it's like at the ends of it is Cozart, and in the middle, owning like 60% is Ingle.
Yeah.
So that's just it's interesting because you don't make a statement like that hardly ever. And I don't want to bag on Cozart. I'm not basing it solely off of, the 13 games and A ball. That's a worthless.
Yeah, the college data did show some
college data. I was a little bit concerned by. I thought he was a first rounder coming into the year, and this is where Cleveland and I strongly disagree. Well, two things. One, I have a younger brother theory that they don't seem to believe in at all. They don't go for the younger brothers; they always take the older brothers. And two, I don't like to see a guy who struggled in their junior year, whereas Cleveland loves to buy low. That is not for me. I think
they buy on the sophomore year. Yeah.
The sophomore year sometimes has more value to them.
And I understand the sophomore theory too, because you're generally on the younger side of competition. So,
and he was better as a junior, but he was kind of more impressive as a sophomore.
Yeah. So I understand that theory. I have to go back and run the data to see how much that works out for them. But Cozart too, the other thing I would look at too for a concern, as we've seen this in the past, is he's a big catcher. He's 6'3", 6'4". Typically guys who are catchers that are that tall.
6'3", 222.
Yeah, he's big for a catcher. So that's always,
Sandy Alomar Jr.
Yeah, a lot of different guys. Salvador Perez is up there, but he's made it work. So yeah, there's two ends to all of it. Wouldn't sleep on Kody Huff, and Kody Huff again. Agreed. This is more of a backup catcher profile, but as we said before, this is a guy that was voted the best defensive catcher in the California League in 2023. Cleveland got him for Cal Quantrill, and then they moved him to high A or double A. They skipped high A completely. Yeah. He's produced some really good exit velocities in the Arizona Fall League. We already know the defense is strong. I still think that offensively we're talking about a backup catcher here, but hitting the ball hard and having a good defensive skill set is not a bad thing to have.
I think he's got helium potential, just because
skipping that level was interesting.
Skipping that level, and he still had a 100 WRC plus, a 307 BABIP. Again, this is a guy in the year before in high A, 332 BABIP. So we're seeing quality contact. We're seeing big exit velocity numbers. We know that he is potentially a 60 defender, a catcher, maybe more. I talked to someone last year when they acquired him who thought that he could be a 70 behind the plate. But so I think Huff is a guy that's really interesting. Don't sleep on him. There are enough traits and stats there that show that there could be something there.
Catchers break out later, by the way, too. Catchers always like this bloom later. So yeah,
if I was making like a sleeper in the system list, like the top 5 sleepers in the system, Kody Huff would be on it.
Yeah, I agree. And then lastly, a catcher, he didn't catch it all this year, but he was drafted as one. It's Ralphy Velazquez. So I mentioned before, talked to James Harris last week or earlier this week, and I asked him, is Ralphy Velazquez done at catcher? Are you gonna, he played first base and outfield. So obviously, I think I mentioned this before. The reason he didn't catch this year was due to a hand injury. They just backed off catcher for the year and just wanted the bat to play. They did not rule out catcher, which, again, not a shock because they never want to rule out defensive versatility. This team loves players who play 2, 3, 4 positions. It's almost a requirement in some cases, which, they do that a ton in the minors, and then they get to the majors and they don't ever do that unless you're, David Fry or on Helmer or,
or
whatever.
you get to the majors and they ask you to do it for the first time.
That too. Yeah, it works. It really works both ways, which is really strange. But James Harris said they're not ruling out catching because, again, they did cite that the hand injury was a big reason why he didn't catch last year. And, he cited David Fry, and they talked about not wanting to lose that from Ralphie's skill set. They do think he's a good athlete. And as we had the conversation about Bo Naylor, like if the bat does take off, then that reduces how much he might catch going forward. But I don't think they're going to rule it out. I would not be shocked if you see Ralphy Velazquez catching in 2025. But I will say I was impressed with him this year, even though he didn't catch. Made that great home run robbery in the outfield. It was like his 3rd game in the outfield or 4th game in the outfield. Good athlete. Also impressed with the character. And the power is very real. It's also number 2 with him. This is a guy who was playing high school ball in 2023 and then just played a full season of pro ball in 2024, made it to high A. That's pretty impressive. It's still pretty hard to do.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he's a lot of fun. Like he's probably my number 3 prospect. But it is a fun top 3, maybe 4, but either way, like it's so much fun this year compared to last year. And you look at the top of this org, it might even be 5. It's going to be a fun debate as we get closer.
It will be. So don't rule out Ralphy Velazquez getting some reps at catcher in 2025. And don't rule out coming back on Monday to listen to our shows next week. So Monday we'll come back with some Monday morning headlines. We'll kind of talk about some of the news around baseball over the weekend and some Guardians news. Hopefully, I know there were some awards that went out on Thursday evening we didn't get to. So we'll talk about the award stuff, I'm sure, on Monday. Any other news that pops up as well. And then Tuesday, like I said, we're going to prepare for the 40-man Rule 5 deadline. Wednesday, we'll do free agent preview. We'll kind of talk about some of the free agents Jeff and I think might be a fit for Cleveland. We'll have trade talk Thursday. You guys are loving that. Juan Soto. That's it. Juan Soto and then done. It's a successful offseason.
They're getting Soto, Fried, and Snell. That's what I heard.
$500 million in
and
deferred
they're
money.
trading Straw and Freeman and Sandlin for Ohtani.
Yeah. And they're
with the Dodgers picking the full freight.
Yes, they would definitely do that. They're very giving over there. We'll do trade talk Thursday again next week. You guys are loving that. Appreciate that. And then we'll do another position review next Friday. So full slate of shows again next week. Get your Guardians baseball fix here 5 days a week. Thank you for being here with us. And we're not going anywhere, and we hope you don't either.
And I just want to say Justin and I are currently doing most of our engagement on Blue Sky. So if you want to hit us up there, Blue Sky or YouTube are probably your best places to contact us right now. But we
JL Baseball, no spaces.
Yeah, it's the same Jeff MLB draft for me. But we want to thank you all for joining us. And again, you really do want to join us next week because we've seen the Reddit. We know the thing. We know that we are known for our covering of prospects in the minors. With the Rule 5 draft, I think we can confidently say no one's going to have you covered better. So make sure you are joining and, telling a friend who might want that information. So remember, rate and review, download daily. Go back and listen to an old show you missed. Go back and listen to a favorite show. What are your favorite episodes ever? Put that in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and go Guardians, go.